Welcome to my YouTube channel, Textiles and Life. I'm Louise Nichols. I'm a textile artist and I live in Cornwall. And this is part, is it 3 or 4? I can't remember now, of the 16 block Christmas hanging. I am a little bit later posting this video than I wanted to be. I've had such a busy couple of weeks. We've had 2 family parties. We've had visitors that came down to stay for one of the parties, family visiting from up in Yorkshire for the second party, as well as I had a workshop. And then on Saturday I was in Liskeard at the 3 Bags Full Fair, wool fair, which was lovely. So, but just another busy day. We went out for a meal that night and then a house full of people again the next day. Anyway, so it's all, the time's just disappeared as it does. But today we are going to be, or I'm going to be filming Christmas puddings. So I'm going to take you overhead and take you through how to stitch the Christmas pudding. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I can confirm it is part 4 of the 16 block Christmas hanging. Also, I ought to say that Liskeard, where I did the 3 Bags Full wool fair, is in Cornwall in the UK, in England in the UK. And also I wanted to thank everybody that came along and bought kits and had some lovely compliments about my stand and about my work. It's always so nice to see people. You know, you don't have to buy a kit to make a difference. It's just so lovely to meet people and to have a chat, and hopefully, you know, it inspires you to do something else, maybe, you know, just to pick up another piece of work that you're working on. So thank you very, very much to everybody who came along and came and spoke. It was really, really nice. So getting back to this, I just have a sip of tea, hang on. Okay, so we've done our holly, the stocking and the Christmas tree, and of course we did, we've done another holly and another Christmas tree that come further down, and today is about the Christmas pudding. So this goes on the very end of the top row, and then there is another Christmas pudding on the second row as well. So we're going to stitch both of those today. So here are the prints for that. Let me move these out of the way now. So these are both prints. I've already got my lightweight interfacing ironed on the back, so that just stabilizes the fabric while I'm stitching it. And because these are slightly complicated shapes, I'm going to do them using my fuser web again. I'm not going to cut them out by eye. I'm going to trace the shapes. So again, if you want to use this and trace through, here it tells you where the felt is, where the little F's are. You could trace through this, but I'm going to trace from my print. So this is my tracing paper, and I only need to trace these shapes obviously once because they're the same on both of the prints. So I'm just going to trace the plate shape at the bottom, and then the section on the top. Now on the print itself, look, there is a line there just to show you where the top of that pudding would go, and I want to cover that over, so I'm going to take my outline for my felt just sort of right on the edge of that. There we go. And then as before, I'm going to turn it over. Let me get my bit of white paper again. Turn it over because they aren't symmetrical shapes, and it's this side that I'm now going to trace onto my fuser web, which works in exactly the same way as Bonder web. So I'm going to trace those through now, and obviously we need 2 of each. Okay, so they're my shapes drawn through, ready to iron onto my felt. So I've got my scraps here, but it's a D that is used for the top of the pudding, and then one of the puddings has a red base, red plate, and the other one has a grey. So I'm going to go now and iron these onto the relevant bits of felt, and then I'll be back. So here we are then. So these are the shapes that I just drew through, and I've now ironed them onto my pieces of felt. So I'm going to cut them out. Again, don't use your best scissors because this is paper. So I've got quite a sharp pair of scissors, but I do cut paper with these scissors. So I'll do that. Okay, so there we are, they're all cut out now, and I just need to take the paper off the back. So for anybody that doesn't know, FuserWeb works in the same way that BonderWeb does. So it leaves a glue on the back, although I'm not, so normally you see you would iron them back onto the piece that you want them to go onto, but I'm not going to iron them on. I'm just going to score that one because that's a little bit, it's not wanting to come off. There we go. I might have to score these as well. Let me do it with a pin, it's easier than doing it with your snippers. There we go. Didn't want to leave my fingers, look. Right, okay. Excuse me. So let's get our puddings back, and so it's the one that's on the kind of bluey grey background. That's the one with the red base. So that one wants to go onto there, like that. And the grey is for the pudding that comes on the next row down. So they want to go like that. And as I say, usually you see you would iron those on, but I'm just going to use a little bit of Pritt stick on the back just to secure them into place before I start stitching. So I wouldn't cover the whole thing. I'd just sort of do a little bit like that just to hold it there like that, and again a little bit there, maybe just a tiny bit in the middle and a bit on the end of the plate, and I'll do the same on the other pudding as well. Okay, so there we go, that's the felt in place, and now we're going to stitch around the outside of that felt using the up and over stitch that you've seen on the previous videos. If you're not sure, on part 1 I go into a little bit more detail about the stitches and details about the threads, where to buy them from. So if you are wanting to find any of that information out, then please go and look at part 1, and that will give you a little bit more info about the stitches, the threads and all that kind of thing. But we're going to be using, if you've bought the full kit, we are going to be using thread number 1, which is the Gutermann colour 111, and it's a creamy, I don't know if it's called bridal white actually, but anyway, it's a cream colour. So I'm going to thread my needle up with that and start stitching. You might have noticed my tatty plaster on my thumb here. It's really difficult, isn't it, when you need to have a plaster on that part of your thumb. I was making a cake for one of the, well, for the party at that we had at the end of it was on Sunday, and there was a caramel. You made some caramel that you then mixed into the cake, and it spat out the pan and landed on my thumb here, and of course it blistered, and then I've taken the top off it and it's quite sore, so I've had to cover it over, but it's really awkward having a plaster there. Anyway, never mind. So let me find my needle for this thread. So as I've said before, I like quite a long needle, but I know some ladies, particularly quilting ladies, they like a shorter needle, and that's fine. Just use the needle that you find the most comfortable to use, whatever you're used to. I always think as long as the eye's not too big, if the eye's too big, the thread will keep pulling out, but as long as your eye's not too big and you're comfortable with it, then that's fine to use. So I'm going to start stitching on this one because this is the one that comes at the end of that top row of 4, and I'll start on the red just so that you can see it, but it's the same thread that I'm going to be using on the top of the pudding as well. And I'm going to start just here on this edge here, so it's single thickness. I've knotted the end, I've put 2 or 3 little knots in the end there, and I'm coming up, this is the up and over stitch, I'm coming up just inside the felt there, and I want my stitch to be nice and straight, so I'm going in opposite where I've come up, like that, and then starting again. And I do this stitch in one movement, so I'll go in and come out, get my needle positioned, ready to pull out, ready for the next stitch, and just work my way along like that. So I'm going to stitch around all these pieces of felt now. Okay, so I've stitched all the way around those, and I forgot there are some little felt squares, look, just up in these top corners. So I'm going to cut those out, but I'll do that just by eye. So I don't do them quite as small as the squares are in the top corners there. I've got them, so let me show you again. I've got them, they're just sort of come down a little bit further, so they're a little bit bigger. So I'm going to cut about that wide, a little strip of felt. And they're red on both of the puddings. So it sort of sits about there. So I'm going to snip that there, like that. It's a bit wonky, that one. I'm just going to give it a little trim because I'm fussy. and 2 for the other one as well. So about there, I think, and about there. Snip a little bit off that one as well. And there. That one's a little bit big actually, so I will just cut that down. Okay, and a little bit of Pritt stick, again, just to hold them in place. So literally just a tiny bit on the back and a bit there. And then I'm going to stitch around the outside of those as well. So I've managed to fit sort of 3 or 4 stitches along each edge of these little squares. And of course I've gone round the edge as well. It's using the same thread as the rest of the felt. Okay, so let's just tie that off, pop a knot in the back, and that's all the felt. That's all the felt now, definitely all the felt stitched on. So the next stitch I'm going to do on the puddings is the couch stitch that runs along the bottom of the square itself. It's right on the edge of the print, so it's this one here, look, along here. Okay, so I'm going to do that next. On your stitch diagram you can see it's this kind of dot and dash mark. All right, so on the one that's on the grey background, you are going to lay down the green thread, this green thread. So this is the DMC shade 580, and if you've bought the kit, it's thread number 6, the kit with that contains the threads. And the other one, it's the red, this red thread that goes across the bottom, and this is Anchor shade 20, and again, if you've bought the kit that's got all the threads in, it's number 8. So I'm going to do one long stitch across the bottom. I'll show you on one so that you can see. So I'm only going to cut myself a short bit of thread for this. Find a right needle. There we go. So a knot in the back, and it goes all the way across the bottom. So I'm going to come up on one side there, right on the corner, and go back in on the opposite corner like that. So I have one long stitch, and then I'm going to take the needle out and I'm going to tie a knot on the back so that I've got a nice secure stitch going across the bottom there, and I'm going to do the same on the other one using the red. So there's our 2 stitches along the bottom, and then we're going to couch over the top of those stitches using the Torkel, which is the size 5, shade 1243, and it's number 4 in your kit. I've got a little bit already in my needle here, so I'm going to use this bit up, and I'm going to start at this edge here, just pop a knot in the back. Now if you want really equal, if you want your stitches to be really equal, you can mark with a pen, one of those marker pens that disappears if you want to. I'm just going to do it by eye. So if you come up on one side, you do come up on one side of the thread like that, and then back down on the other side, so that this stitch, it just sort of bridges over the top of the stitch that you've laid down. I don't pull it really tight either. I let it just sit on the top, and then move along. It's about 1 centimetre, and do another one. And I'm going to go all the way along here, and I'm going to do the red one as well. And when you get to the end, just tie off at the back like you have with all the other ones. Okay, so that's your size 5 across the top, and then we're going to stitch in between those larger stitches with the Gutermann sewing thread again. So it's back to number 1. I'll get my needle threaded up, and I'll stitch in between. You can usually fit 2 or 3 stitches in between each of those large stitches. I'll start with the green again. So I'm coming up on one side and going back down on the other, and you can do this in one action. Look, you can go in and come out ready to start again. You can't do that with a thick thread, it distorts the fabric too much, but with the thin thread you can do that. So you can see there, look, I've managed to fit 3 in between there, but only 2 in there, and that's absolutely fine. Don't worry if that happens with you. So I'm going to stitch all the way along here, and then I'm going to do the red one. Okay, so we're nearly at the end of there. Just a few more stitches in that last little section, and that will do. So I'll just tie that off on the back. A couple of knots when it's a thin thread, I always think. There we go. And then just give this a little, so I get hold of the thread on the back, so the red, and just give it a little pull, and it just straightens it out. If it's gone a little bit wibbly wobbly when you're stitching, it just pulls it back into line a little bit more. So that's both the bottom ones done, and then the other bit of couching on the puddings is the holly on the holly leaves here. So that's using the green again. So I'm going to snip myself a little bit more of that. Knot the end there. Oh, hang on, get rid of that red thread there. So this is the same green that went across the bottom of the grey coloured pudding. So let me show you on the stitch diagram actually. So you can see on the holly it's these here. Now there's no thick thread used in this, so this is just the line with all the little dashes in it. Is that one there? So I'm going to come up, it's marked where I've carved the lino out, you can see where those centre lines are meant to be. So I'm going to come up right at the beginning of that line and go back in at the end of the holly. And again, because this is quite a short distance, I'm going to take it across the back. So come back up at the beginning of that leaf there, and then go back in at the end of that line. Now there is a little bit of a curve on these holly leaves here, so I don't want to pull it too tight because I do want to be able to sort of just pull that thread into the curve as I'm stitching. If it was a big curve, I would take my needle out and leave it loose, but that's enough there just to be able to stitch that down, and I'm going to do the same on the other pudding as well. So come up at the top there, in at the point, take it across at the back and back in at the end of that line there, and then tie off on the back. I've not pulled it too tight again, so it's just given me a little bit of slack to be able to pull it into that slight curve. And back to the Gutermann cream thread. Yeah, I do need a little bit more in my needle. Let me thread that up again. And you're going to do some little stitches, exactly how we did in between those larger stitches there, the thicker thread stitch there. You're going to stitch along the two stitches that you've made in the holly. So I'm going to just start at one end and finish at the end there. So you'll probably fit, I don't know, maybe 4, 5, maybe 6 stitches along this thread. So I'm just going to use my thumb look just to hold it down into that curve a little bit more. So it's over the top and then back out, ready to start the next stitch again. So I'm going to go all the way along this, and then I'm going to do the other pudding as well. And again, if you want to give that just a little pull, it just makes it sit nice and flat. I've already done it on that one. Okay, so that's all the couching on the puddings. So the next stitch is French knots. I'm going to do some French knots now. I bring the original one over again. So on here we have French knots in the top corners here, and also all over the pudding, which actually you can probably see better on the other pudding. So you can see them all on there. So I'm going to do the ones in the top corner first, and then I'm going to do the one on the pudding. So on the grey one, the ones in the top corner are again done with this green thread that we've used on the base and in the holly, and they're quite big chunky knots. So I'm going to do these at double thickness. I'm just looking for my needle. There it is. I like this one. I was using, so when I was just doing these stitches here, I was just using a chenille needle, this one here, but when I'm doing French knots, I like the milliner needle, because it's the same width, more or less anyway, all the way down, and I find that easier to pull through a French knot. So I'm going to knot the end like that. I might have too much thread there, but anyway, you don't want to be struggling with too short a length when you're doing French knots. I think they're fiddly, I can't say the word, fiddly enough without your thread being too short. So you come up in the, I don't come up quite in the middle of the square, and then I'm going to go round my needle twice and then back down almost where I came up, like that. And then I keep my thumb on the thread as I'm pulling it through, and there's my nice big chunky knot, and then tie off at the back. So I'm going to do the same in the other corner as well. So another knot on the back, come up, not quite in the middle. I think if you came up in the middle, and then because I don't go back in where I've come up, you would be going somewhere, you'd sort of take the knot off centre. I don't know if that makes sense, but that's why I don't quite come up in the middle. I'm sort of a little bit further down. And then round your needle twice, back in almost where you came out, and then I slide that knot down to the bottom before pushing the needle through, like that. Still not quite in the middle, but hey ho, there we go. Okay, so two big chunky knots there, and tie off on the back like that. Okay, so on the other pudding, the French knots at the top are the Finca size 8 shade 3000, and if you've bought the kit, it's which one is it? Is it 7? Yes, number 7. Okay, so again I'm going to don't know where the end of that one's gone. Perhaps I've not used it yet. There we go. Okay, so make sure again you've got a decent length on there. And then you're not fiddling about, are you, trying to, it just makes it too fiddly, doesn't it? So knot the ends together. So come up, round twice, back in almost where you came out, slide it down, push the needle through. If you don't want to do French knots as well, I know some people absolutely hate them, don't they? You could put beads on, but I wouldn't put the beads on just yet. If you do decide to use beads, these do have a bead. There's a red bead that sits in the middle of the holly leaves, but we won't be putting those on yet. So if you do decide to put beads on, don't do it yet. Right, okay, there we go. Ooh. And again, look, I've got quite a length of thread left there, so I'm going to take that off and pop it in with that so that I don't forget that I've got it. Okay, there we go, just pull that down a little bit more, a little bit higher than I would have wanted it, but never mind. There we go. I'm trying to be quick, you see. Okay, so the French knots on the pudding. So they're all done with the, this is a DMC thread, shade 413, and on your threads it's number 2. And I'm going to thread my needle again. I'm going to use the same needle, but this time single thickness. These, I don't want these knots quite as big. So I'm going to knot the end. And I'll show you on this one actually, because it stands out a little bit better. On your stitch diagram, where the knots are, it's there. The French knots are just marked with a solid dot. So wherever the solid dots are, that's where the French knots go. You don't have to stick to that. If you want to put less in, that's absolutely fine. If you want to cram more in, that's absolutely fine as well. So I'm going to start on this side, and I carry my thread across with this one because they're quite close together. If I was doing sort of a French knot here and one over here, I would cut off because I don't like that thread trailing across. But with this, I'm going to carry on with one thread. So round my needle twice, back in almost where I came out, slide that knot down, push through, and there's my knot, and try not to catch the other threads in it. Okay, so I'm going to move up here now and do the next one. Slide it down, push it through, so I'm going to do all of these and the ones on the other one, and then I'll bring you back in. So all the French knots are done. I've not followed where the dots are on the guide exactly. I've just kind of filled up as I'm going across. So and they're both a little bit different. So the next stitch is the running stitch. So over the top of the felt on each of the puddings and also in the plate, I'm going to do those rows of running stitch there, and there's a little tiny one there. So on your stitch guide, you can see it's these lines here. So on the bluey pudding, it's the size 11. No, it's not size 11. It's finger size 16, number 11 if you've bought the kit. Shade 8773 if you haven't bought the kit. And on the other pudding, on this one, I've used a dark green in the grey, but you can't actually see it very well. So to make it easy, I'm going to do this one in the grey as well. So over the top, the little dash there, and in the plate, and I'm going to do it all using the number 11 or the or size shade 8773. Oh dear. It's only Tuesday and it's already been a long week. And it's getting later in the afternoon. It's getting really dark outside. It's 10 to 5. Mind you, the rain today has been horrendous. Torrential. So it looks as if it's going to rain again. That's probably why it's going so dark. I've got 2 lamps on to date so that you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to do this over the top first here. So it starts sort of in this little slopey bit here. So I'm not on the edge, I'm sort of sat a couple of millimetres inside the stitches that you've done on that outside edge there. And I'm going to just go all the way along the top. Squeeze another one in at the end there, I think. Right down there, like that. And then I'm going to carry on along the plate here and do another row. Sort of sits in the middle of the plate or dish, whatever you would like to call it. Prick my thumb then. Yeah, I think I can get another stitch in at the end there as well. So one more. There we go. And then, say there's a little one there. I'm going to tie that off and do that separately. I don't want to take it across that far. So it just sort of sits in this little dip here. And then I'm going to repeat that on the other pudding. There we go. Little knot in the back. That's it. I think that's much better. It stands out a little bit more than the green. Okay. Now all the way around the outside in these little squares, there are like little, they are like just a little straight stitch. I don't know if you can see in there, look, going up there. And on your stitch diagram, look, you can see where I've drawn it in there. And on both puddings, on both of the borders, it's using the Finca 16, so number 10 if you've bought the kit, and shade 3000 if you haven't. So I'm going to cut myself a length of that, and I'll start you off on there. There's also a couple of rows, just a few straight stitches, look, in here on this bottom section. And again, on the original, I've used that dark green, but I'm going to use the cream so that it just makes it a little bit easier, and it will stand out a little bit better as well. So let's start on this one, and you can do this in one long run. So if you start here, and I'm probably going to fit about 3 running stitches going down, so that's 1, 2, 3, and then turn it around and do another 3, so you've got those 2 rows there then. So that's 1, 2 and 3, and then you're ready to start doing those little stitches in those boxes. You can go all the way around and then finish again with 2 rows of running stitch at the bottom there. So the stitches go, they're sort of in the centre of these little squares, and they just go out, not all the way across, about 3/4 probably, about there, like that. And then you can start again on the next box. So what I tend to do is hold it this way, go in, cross over like that, ready to come out. So I'm going in, crossed over at the back with my needle ready to stitch again. And then when you get to this corner, or any of the corners in, I am going to take that across there. Again, this isn't a very thick thread, so it won't make a lumpy line when you iron it onto the backing. And then that's ready to start again. So I'm going to go all the way around this one, do this one as well, and then we'll be ready for the next lot of running stitches. There we go then. That's the running stitch finished around the outside. Ooh. Edge there. There we go, on both puddings. So the final bit of stitching on these puddings, there are 2 rows of running stitch that go around the outside, inside of it, sits inside those boxes there that we've just stitched. And on the grey one, it's using the cream thread that we've just used, this one. And on the other one, we're using This is a Finca 16 as well, shade 5229, and in your kit it is number 12, thread number 12. So I'm going to show you on this pudding because the green will stand out a little bit more than the cream that I'm going to use on the other one. So I don't cut too much of this one off, and I'm going around twice, so I'm going to cut myself that sort of length off. Ooh. So not in the end. And what I'm going to do is start here, go around and then come back on myself. Like that. So I'm doing my stitches a little way in from that edge. I'm not stitching on the edge. I've just come in a little way. Like that. And you're ready to start going across the top. So I'll do this and thread up and do the other pudding as well. So you can see here, again, because it's only a thin thread, I'm taking the thread behind, doing a few little stitches in between those two holly leaves, and then coming out, ready to do that last stitch of that row. Turn it round, and then you're at the end on your on the last run. Now, although the cream, it doesn't stand out like the green, it does create texture, and I think that's really nice. A bit like when you're stitching around the outside of the pudding, the felt on the top of the pudding, you know, it creates, although you can't really see the cream thread, it creates texture on the top, which I think is really nice. Okay, so tie that off, and there your pudding's finished. Now, those of you who are very observant, you may have noticed that on the original pudding there is a little bit more stitching, but I just didn't feel it was completely necessary, so I haven't added it in. But if you want to put it in, you can do. So I did a line of stitching around the outside of the pudding. In fact, let me show you on the other pudding because it does stand out a little bit more on there. So I'd done a line of stitching around the top, and I'd also done some little stitches inside those holly leaves, but I didn't feel that they were completely necessary, so I haven't done them. But if you want to add them in, That's completely up to you. Otherwise, your puddings are finished. So thank you very much again for joining me. Thank you if you've bought a kit. They've been selling really well. I'm very pleased with sales, which is just lovely that you want to join in. And next time we're on to stars. So we'll be stitching the stars next time. Now, there might be a little bit of a bigger gap again because I've got 3 workshops this coming up in the next 6 days. So I won't really have time to do any filming. And then when I do film it, I think I might have mentioned before, my husband edits the videos and uploads them onto YouTube. So I don't know how you do that. So although I will be filming it, he's not around, he's back at work, and he works quite long shifts, so he's not around to edit it. So there may be a little bit of a gap, a longer gap than I wanted, but then after that we should be back on track for once a week. Okay, thank you very much then. See you next time for stars. Bye.